Welcome to Train Signal. You are watching the video Lab Setup. In this video, I will be covering three topics: the lab hardware and software requirements, the computer configuration, and network cabling and connectivity. Let's first start with the lab hardware and software requirements. You will need three computers for this lab. Each of these computers should be at least Pentium 1 133 MHz or better. For memory, for RAM, you need at least 128 MB. For hard drive, for the servers, and we will be setting up two computers as servers, you will need at least 6 GB. And for the client machine on which we will be installing Windows XP, you will need 2 GB. Now this was the minimum requirement. Let's talk about the recommended requirements. Nowadays, it is not difficult to get a computer that is at least Pentium 4 or at least a Celeron in gigahertz as the processor speed. So once again, if you have that, that is great. The faster the processor, the faster your labs will be performed. However, I highly recommend that you have at least Pentium 2 300 MHz or better. For RAM, you should have at least 256 MB, and for hard disk space, at least 10 GB or more. Once again, these requirements are not mandatory, but I'm sure at the same time, it's not difficult to meet. As far as the network connections, you will need one NIC card per machine. So that's my NIC over here. You will need a switch or a hub to put this network together. And last but not the least, you will need 3 Category 5 or 3 Cat5 or Ethernet cables. Let's move on to the next topic, which is computer configuration. This is the naming convention that we will use for our computers. The first computer, we will call it DC1. On this computer, we will set up the IP address of 200.200.200.1/24. This /24 actually means that your subnet mask will be 255.255.255.0. So once again, the first computer will be DC1 with a network ID of 200.1 with a subnet mask of /24, which is 255.255.255.0. On this computer, we will install Windows Server 2003. If you have Service Pack 2, great, please go ahead and install it. On a second computer, we will call it DC2. On this computer also, we will install Server 2003, and this computer will have an IP address of 200.2 with a /24. The third computer, we will install Windows XP Professional. This computer we will call Client 1, and on this computer, the IP address will be 200.200.200.11/24. Again, if you have Service Pack 2, go ahead and install it. So to summarize, three computers. First computer is DC1, second computer is DC2, and a third computer, which is the client computer, will be Client 1. And you will install the operating systems accordingly. Our IP addresses will follow these names. 200.1 will be DC1, 200.2 will be DC2, and the client one, we will give it an IP address of .11. Going on to the next screen over here, here is the diagram to show you how the network will be set up. So here's a switch. You will take an Ethernet cable from each computer, namely DC1, DC2, and Client 1, and then connect the Ethernet cable from the NIC card of that computer to the switch. So here are my three NIC cards and three computers connected together to the switch. And here's our naming conventions once again: DC1 with an IP address of 200.1, and so on and so forth. I'm sure you get the idea. So this is how a network is going to look like. Now, what I've done is the following. I'm sitting on a base system from which I'm recording the sessions. This is my screen. You will be able to easily recognize the screen by looking at the Train Signal logo over here and these computer icons. This is what I've done. We have our three computers, DC1, DC2, and Client 1. I am accessing all these three computers by means of remote desktop connection. This is only for convenience, so that I can take you to the screens of each of these computers and show you exactly what is taking place over there. And every time I do that, every time I switch, I will let you know exactly that I'm switching to that particular computer, and visually you'll be able to tell which computer we are currently on. This is extremely important for you to understand, because in a true client-server network, there are certain steps that have to be performed on certain computers, and knowing these steps is extremely important. So what I've done is, at this point, I have activated remote desktop. How do you do that? Well, let me show you. Right click on my computer, go to properties, and then on the remote tab, here is the checkbox that says allow users to connect remotely to this computer. By enabling this checkbox, you are allowing any user who's the administrator of that computer to have remote access to that computer. So I have done that, and then I've set up shortcuts over here. The way I've set up these shortcuts is by using the desktop connection. To do that, you need to go to Start, go to All Programs, and in there go to Accessories, Communications, and then click on this program called Remote Desktop Connection. So by clicking on it, I've activated this program, and then over here you need to type the IP address of the computer that you're trying to connect to. So in my case it is 200 dot, oops, sorry about that, the connection went too fast. I already actually connected to it, but here's what you would do. You would fill up the screen with the IP address, and then if I expand the options, you can pre-enter the username, the password, and then you can choose to save it to save time. So I've done that. The username that we're going to use for the administrator's account will be administrator, the password is password, and I've chosen to save my password. After that, I simply clicked on Save As, and then save this icon to my desktop. So right over here, I saved it as DC1, and hence you see these icons over here. Once again, I just showed you how to use remote desktop to connect to several PCs. However, if you have 3 computers and 3 screens, great, you do not have to do that. This is just an optional setting if you so desire. I'm going to definitely use this for our session. So let me give you a little tour of how I have set up these networks. So let's visit DC1. Every time I do that, I'll be letting you know that I'm going to double click on the remote desktop connection for DC1. I just got connected to DC1, and here's my screen. I'm going to close this activation window over here. You will know that I am on DC1 by visually looking at the color. It's blue in color, and I'm going to double click over here so that my screen is maximized. And here you will always see the label on top, DC1, with an IP address of 200.200.200.1, so you know exactly which computer we are on. Also, the computer name, I have renamed this computer from my computer to DC1. Okay, so we are at this point on the computer DC1. Let's check it out. I'm going to go to the command prompt of this computer. Do you see the 2 start buttons over here? This is my base screen, and this is the start button of the computer called DC1. So I'm going to go to the command prompt by typing on run and then typing CMD, and then over here I'm going to clear my screen, and let's type ipconfig. Here we go. I'm sitting on DC1, and my IP address is 200.200.200.1. Okay, it is very important that before you do any of these labs, you check for connectivity. So let's do that. I'm going to ping the computer called DC2, whose IP address you know is 200.2. So let's try that. And here we go. I got a positive response. Next, I'm going to ping our client, and if you recall, our client's IP address is 11. So I'm going to do that, and here we go. So we have connectivity between our 3 computers. I'm going to close the screen now, and in this manner give you a tour of the other 3 computers. So I'm going to minimize this. I'm back to my base screen. Now I'm going to go to DC2, double click on it, and here's our remote desktop connection to DC2. Once again, visually you'll be able to tell that you're in DC2 for the following reasons. I'm going to double click on this. You saw the distinct change in color over here, so I've used a different background, green in this case, and here you know that we are on DC2 because I've renamed the my computer icon to DC2, and here's the IP address for DC2 as well. I'm going to minimize this. Let's take you to the client computer. I'm sure by now you know the routine. So here's client 1, and once again I have attempted to change the color. I don't know exactly what to call this color, but here it is, a little shade of violet, a purple. Here's a computer called client 1, and then we are sitting on a computer called client 1. The IP address is 200.11. So you'll know exactly which computer I'm doing what activity on. I'm going to minimize this. So from time to time, I'll have my notes open over here so that you can follow what are the procedures that I'm going through. And then I'll have these icons open. So every time I need to go to DC1, I'll simply select this, and I'll be on DC1, and will perform the activities over there. So that you know, most of the activities that we'll be doing will be on DC1 for most part. DC2 will be our backup or an additional domain controller, and the client 1 is where we will be checking all the settings from. We are going to play the scenario of a user sitting on the machine called client 1, so that all the GPOs and all the other policies that we implement in this lab, we will be actually testing from client 1. So all the labs that you will see in this video will actually be production labs. They will not be show and tell labs that you may be accustomed to in books, you know, where you go and click on start, programs, admin tools, and create a user and so forth. We will never ever just create a user and never use it. Okay, so we're going to create users, we're going to use those users, we'll go to different computers, log on from there. You will actually see production happen in front of your eyes. And by following the steps that I'm going to show you in this lab, I'm sure that you'll easily be able to set up a lab of your own in your house or in your office and be able to practice all the concepts that I'm going to teach you in these videos. So once again, going back, 3 computers, and this is how the computers will be set up together. Finally, to increase efficiency and reduce setup time, please leave about 2 to 3 gigabytes of free space on the hard disk of DC1 at the time of installation of Server 2003. When you move on to the next video series, namely Lab 15, you will need the free space on DC1 to install a service known as RIS. So by leaving the free space on the hard disk of DC1 at the time of this installation, you will not have to reinstall DC1 for the next video series. In this manner, this lab setup actually prepares you for both Lab 14 as well as Lab 15. I thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you very soon in the next video in Active Directory.